I've had no apologies for today. We welcome visiting councillors, Councillor Tozer and Councillor O'Neill. We have a leave of absence which was from Councillor Peter Young for this meeting, and that went through council meeting previously. So that's covered. Confirmation of minutes. I might just, unless anyone has any concerns with those, we could just star those and we'll move them with the other starred item. I haven't received any conflicts of interest.
Can I just say with the minutes, do you know are they available as a public document? They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
So the Bulletin wanted to write a story about something, they could read the minutes to realise what we actually decided?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I can't do a clarification, but the clarification is what we actually decided was to co-contribute $5 million with the State of Queensland in regards to preliminary studies. That's what I reckon we decided to do.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean we didn't offer 50% construction costs?
So no conflict of interest declarations. With starred will be 3, 5.1, 6.1, 6.2 and 6.3. Would we like to unstar anything? Councillor Patterson.
Shall we unstar 6.3?
And unstar 6.3. Any others to be unstarred there, councillors? So if I could have someone move 3, 5.1, 6.1 and 6.2, moved by Councillor Owen Jones. That would be seconded by Councillor Darren Taylor. Councillors all in favour? That's carried. So we will go to item 6.3, the Urban Oasis Public Art Installation. Director, have we got a presentation on that?
Yes, we do. So we have Mitch Braddow coming into the room. Mitch is the Manager of Infrastructure Delivery. Before...
Yeah.
So this is the first time I have seen Mitch in a tie and jacket, so I think we're all pleasantly surprised. So before we quickly kick into the report, just a couple of things. So there was a change to the analysis options and there is a new revision for you all. Mitch will take you through the key changes in that. It was an earlier version that was done prior to some consultation with Parks, so we'll go through that component. So today, if I probably kick off, obviously the Silver Ferns has been around for quite some time, certainly before Mitch and I were in the T&I team. We last came to council in 2019 and essentially were asked to go and do some analysis about utilising the art which had been commissioned in partnership with the state somewhere in the light rail corridor in stage 3. So today Mitch is here to present on, obviously we did that analysis, the reasons why that wasn't appropriate and why we've actually reverted back to a previous recommendation to look at the botanical gardens. What we've done is ultimately provide you with all the information relating to the different types of costs. One of my observations when I joined the TI team was that sometimes we talk to council about implementation costs, but not necessarily about the total life of costs. So the team have done that analysis so that you understand the maintenance and ongoing for the 30 years, I believe these potentially could be around for. Ultimately, that's what we're here today, to provide you that information so you can make an informed decision.
So, councillors, we might let Mitch go through the whole presentation prior to, and if you've got questions, if you can just write those down as we go along, and I'll go from left to right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Is that on?
It should be. Press
Is that on? Press it.
there. Oh,
No, turn it off.
there we go.
Thank you, Chair. As the Director noted, this is a project that has been around for some time and rightly so. We had recently come back to Council to give an update on how we were performing, trying to locate the Urban Oasis artworks in the Nobby Beach space. The light rail stage 3 team did some feasibility assessment of that and it was found that we couldn't actually get it into that sort of rail corridor. It's just too many services, too many constraints to be able to place it in that space. So we reverted back to some previous sites that had been identified, one of those being the Botanical Gardens. So as part of that, we've now, in consultation with L&C, we've looked at 3 specific locations within the Botanic Gardens, one being at the entryway as you enter the Botanical Gardens. The second site is as you head around on the ring road. It's on the very eastern side. And then the third site is down on the promenade space at the southern side of the Botanical Gardens. And again, I'll make note that we did actually attach an earlier version of the multi-criteria analysis, and I'll plead high performance principle number 10, where it's okay to make mistakes. So apologies for that.
It may as well be a good one.
Well, that's true. But so the multi-criteria analysis looked at a range of different components, including ability to be able to construct it, the location, the artist's intent, as well as cost and all of those other components. And I guess the main difference between the original report that you saw as part of the agenda item and the revised one that was meant to be attached was that post around about mid-January, we went back and did some additional collaboration with our team from L&C, and there was some very strong opposition to the removal of trees, foliage down in that promenade space, which gave the multi-criteria analysis a different view. You can see that from that MCA, all of the results are actually very similar. They're all really quite close, but location 1 did edge out the other 2 locations.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Owen Jones.
So in regards to option 1 at the main entrance, does that still require the potential removal of mature trees?
No, at this stage, we don't believe. There may be some trimming of trees, but no removal of any mature trees.
So I had a cursory glance at the change in the multi-criteria, but my reading of the report initially was that there were words along the lines of to improve visibility, numerous mature trees located near the main entrance would need to be removed.
Yeah, so what the initial intent was to ensure that the artwork was placed in accordance with what the artist had envisioned.
Yeah.
So to be able to do that, there was quite a lot of work involved in that placement. We've actually adjusted the placement of those so that we don't impact as much of the site. So initially, you're right, we were envisaging that there was going to be more works at that entry statement, but following consultation with L&C, we managed to look at some locations that don't have that requirement.
So what we are missing is the difference in the costs for the 3 different options?
That's correct. We haven't priced all 3 options. We've only priced option 1 at this stage. No, they're not substantially different. So they've all got their own constraints. So obviously the location down at site 3, which is down at the bottom of the site, doesn't have as much associated with roadwork. So the site 1 at the entry requires a concrete barrier to protect from an errant vehicle, which does add cost to that site. But similarly, if you look at site 3, the lower RL starts to bring in other conditions like acid sulfate soils and probably, because we haven't confirmed it at this stage in terms of our investigation, likely larger footings.
So I just have 2 other questions. The first one is in regards to maintenance and the proposed, on average, 40,000 a year. Is there any way that can be reduced or mitigated, or are we hiring somebody to polish them on an annual basis?
Yeah, so potentially. So I'll cover the maintenance costs as they are at the moment. So we've engaged an external consultant to do an assessment of the condition of the artwork. And no disrespect to the artists, but from an engineering perspective, the finish of the surface isn't quite where we want it to be. So there are some discrepancies in terms of meeting standards that reduce potential for corrosion, tarnishing, that sort of thing. So it's all around surface finish, acute angles with how the structure's been engineered. So because of that, it's likely that we will see increased patina at a highly increased rate. So to be able to ensure that we can keep them in their current condition or in their optimal condition, the external report has said that ongoing maintenance will be required on an annual basis. And because
unless we wanted to live with a patina. So, for example, the rustage.
That is one potential. Obviously, there are a couple of components of that around the base plates and the like where we don't want to see any corrosion, but the patina could be something that we could live with. Because of the size of the structures and then the requirement for the detailed polishing and the like, it's likely that we'll have to dismantle them to be able to do that, to get it back to optimal state. The alternative is that we could look at expending additional money as part of the capital process to get the structures up to the appropriate standard before we put them in place. That at this point in time requires a specialist provider and some specialist facilities because it's quite technical what they have to do to try to get it back up to the appropriate standard.
Okay, and I'd like to appreciate where we might be in regards to our obligations to the artist. Have we decoupled ourselves from the artist? So I read in the report that if we don't put it in Surfers Paradise and we locate it somewhere else, that we're just going to not acknowledge the artist's name. Is that the end of our obligation there?
So what I would say is that we've sought that advice, which we can do. I guess the next step, if we determine a location, or if council determines a location, would be to go back to the artist to see if they do want their name associated with the artwork in that location. If the artist chooses not to have themselves associated with it, then that is the end of our obligation as far as I understand.
And my recollection of the conversation that we might have had previously in regards to the Kira Eagle is that we had to offer, I thought we had to offer the artwork back to the artist in order to be able to deal with it if we wanted to, for example, dispose of an asset. Is that the case?
I can't comment on that. I'm not...
Through you, Chair, to the Director.
We'll take that on notice. As far as we're aware, we haven't been given any legal advice that that's in the contract with the artist, but we'll confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. My recollection of the funding initially for this was that it was from a biodiversity grant to replace the greening of the light rail with real plants that couldn't be undertaken. And my question is, because it surprises me that the state would fund or commission the development of the art that we're now stuck with, was it their intention to help through the light rail project with the installation of this artwork, or did they just give us a grant to purchase some artwork and install it? Do you know?
Through the Chair, I would be only surmising. My understanding, and I haven't got anything documented to support that, but my understanding after speaking to a number of different persons involved in that space was that the state gifted or granted money as part of that public art realm component of the light rail stage 1 to council.
I don't believe that's true. I believe it was a biodiversity grant specifically because we couldn't undertake within Surfers Paradise Precinct the natural planting that we were to undertake. So I guess I struggle with this because I can't understand how something was commissioned that's unsuitable for the light rail track, given that we can't now accommodate it at Nobby's because of the services. So we got funding for a grant that was never going to be able to be materialised as part of the light rail network, which is why we were given the money. It's weird.
So Councillor Gates, I can confirm some of that for you. So I obviously neither Mitch or I being involved originally, I have the previous report in front of me. And certainly from that, when we came to committee in 2019, we spoke about it being part of the funding deed originally as a contribution towards stage 1, which was, and this was included in the council in kind costs for the stage 1. So there was an agreement from the state to allocate 750,000 of those funds to urban design and landscaping enhancements to improve the corridor, and that was broken down into the 410,896 for the public art and the balance to be spent on public space and landscaping works. So when we did a little bit of due diligence, that funding, because it was council in kind, has been completed in other works, as I understand, as part of stage 1. So whilst we can't, and certainly from our perspective, having artwork that wasn't probably commissioned to align to what we would need in there, I'm not quite sure how we end up here. Certainly from our perspective, what we're trying to do is just provide what we can so you can make a decision on how we move forward.
Thank you. No.
Thank you. And has there been any valuation of the art piece if we did want to not install it and sell it? I know there's some obviously artists involved in relation to the design work, but have we ever considered? Because for me, the cost of installation is double of what we actually paid for it. And the other question I do have is, when we actually commissioned it, was there a proportion of the funds allocated at that time for installation, and what was that amount?
So we didn't actually allocate funding for the installation because it was part of a funding deed to state as part of the stage 1 light rail. It was a council in kind, so there wasn't actually an initial funding allocation on its own to do the actual installation. I think in terms of the actual cost, I think it would depend on what we were trying to utilise it for. So if we were, I think similar to Councillor Owen-Jones' question, if we decided we did want to use it as public art, we'd first need to make sure legally what we can and actually use it to, whether we had that obligation back to the artist, before we could determine potentially whether, you know, we would want to decommission it in some type of way. So we haven't gone down that avenue yet.
No? You done? Yeah. Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I feel like Mr. Bean. It's true. He got to meet the Queen, though. Madam Chair, some time ago, Council, if that appears in Friday's column, man, Council endorsed the potential delivery of an interpretive centre at the Botanic Gardens, and my recollection was that there was a change to the recommendation that asked city officers to have a look at what the future intersection or entrance might look like and how it may be configured in order to meet the increased number of vehicles entering the site. And we asked for that work to be done before council then took a further step of supporting the actual capital allocation for construction. My question is, has any work been done around the planning for that intersection upgrade as we've resolved? And if so, has that been countenanced in the potential location of these ferns at the entrance itself? In other words, are we potentially putting these ferns at a location which might need to be moved? Thank you.
So I will bring in my phone a friend, if that's okay, Councillor. Sure. So I do understand that when we've been talking to the Parks team, the master plan for the Botanical Gardens has been taken into account, but I'll allow Tony to elaborate further.
Yeah, thanks. And I might just say, this is my recollection. I might have it completely wrong, but yeah.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, Councillor Voss, you're absolutely correct. When we brought back the 100% concept design on the Biodiversity Centre proposal, there was a piece of work that had to go away as well as the MCU to have a look at that traffic study. That work is beginning. There's a bit to that, but we don't envisage the placement of these ferns having an impact on that at this stage.
And with all due respect, and Tony, this is not your problem, not your fault, not your drama, but we also envisaged that the ferns could fit in the original constrained site, and unfortunately it didn't quite work out. And I humbly submit that the time to examine these options probably should be after the examination of the intersection upgrade.
Councillor Patterson, then Councillor Hamill.
Thank you, through you, Chair. When this place was decided, was there any consideration for the outdoor sculpture area of Hotter? Was that one we considered?
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Look, so from our perspective, we went back to the previous, I guess, areas that had been considered. We didn't open up to the whole of the city in terms of those different areas. So we stayed in terms of the investigation areas that had been envisioned originally as per the previous report.
Okay, and I mean, this is quite, a statement if it was to go in for the gardens, and our friends of the gardens are pretty integral to that area and the development of it. My understanding is, well, in their experience, they haven't been consulted, more they've been told. I'd just be curious to know about what the consulting approach is when we're looking at putting this there. Thanks.
Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Yes, there was a meeting held with two of the executives on, the 7th of Feb, which one of the agenda items was the possible location of the ferns in the entrance way. The conversation, it's not admitted totally as to the conversation, but was that the President asked our staff member if they thought this was the best location for them, and that was, the advice was yes, we do. And there seemed to be at that time no particular reaction to the, or negative reaction to the ferns going in.
So just on that, how I find this all somewhat bewildering, particularly when I'm looking at the amount of consultation that I need to go through for an off-leash dog park, which I know my residents are championing for, but we need to go through and tick process. So there isn't an experience at all of being consulted on this, and when you give them the confidence that you say, we've assessed and we think this is the best place, but then I'm just told that no other place was considered. So how did that work? That you're happy to say, okay, this is the best place, but you've said you haven't actually investigated even our arts precinct, which has outdoor sculptures, or any light rail place, which is where it was meant to be, the CBD. We don't know whether we can gift it.
Councillor Patterson, so...
it is a question.
No. I will respond to that. As in my area alone, they've investigated Nobbies, they've investigated a parks area, they've investigated Memorial Park. So a list did come forward of areas on the light rail corridor that could possibly support it. They're all investigated and none of them were seen fit for that. So there has been lists in the past. They're not all listed down there now because they were out of the picture because they couldn't be supported.
So through you, Madam Chair, thank you. So we obviously looked in the light rail corridor. So the last report that went to council, that was what the request was for us to do, which was to, there was a number of investigations, and the request was for us to go and investigate Nobby's Beach and the rest of the light rail stage 3 corridor. So ultimately we weren't able to find a place. There was a working group that actually worked through a number of different places within it. What we then done is gone back to what was in the original list, going back from 2017. So what we haven't done is introduced new options into this part of the process.
Okay, but the outdoor sculpture area of Hodder was not one of them.
I'll have to check back through the reports on,
Okay.
on which ones were originally. I think it was always the light rail corridor was the intent.
Okay. But the gardens isn't on the corridor.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think that was thrown up as a
Okay.
part.
So, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but I just would like it to be said. When we're looking at putting this there in the gardens, this isn't out of any kind of guidance of what we need or want to represent our gardens, right? This is purely, where do we put this thing? That's effectively the question you're answering. Is that correct?
Ultimately, through you, Madam Chair, ultimately, yes. So, you know, as I mentioned, there's obviously a long history here, and there's multitude of learnings throughout the process, absolutely. From our perspective, you know, the city assets team now have this this artwork, and it's literally sitting there, and we're looking for guidance on how you'd like us to proceed. Next to the pink.
Councillor Hamill.
Madam Chair, Councillor Patterson has put forward the question I had, so if you're open to it, I have a change of recommendation. I haven't had a chance to email it through, Madam Chair, so is the Minute Secretary happy to take it as I read it? Yep. Just to chamber support. That's been sent. It's done in notes, so there'll just be a bit of reworking of it.
Gets better. Well, no, it's got a residual value.
This is good, isn't it? He's grown good theatre. We took about 3 hours. You came back in 3 hours. It's a 1 o'clock shadow. This place looks like
Oh, you're so naughty.
Here we go. Let's bring it back. Oh, you're not serious, are you?
No, it's just been cute.
No, nothing cute about it.
That would have to be a GB item, wouldn't it?
To the race course.
Number 3.
Seriously.
Correct me if I'm,
What's
councillors,
ridiculous about it?
councillors, correct me if I'm wrong, we are, number 3 there would need to be a GB item rather than something that's related to, tacked onto the silver ferns.
I'm happy
Am
to
I
take.
correct or incorrect, councillor Gates?
You're chairing the meeting.
Yeah, I'm asking.
probably
Yeah, for some advice. I actually think, yeah, I think they're two completely different.
Well, if that's the chair's ruling, then 3 can be deleted and put forward as a GBI at the end if
Please.
you'll accept it.
I'd appreciate it.
And the
Thank
rest
you,
of it can
Councillor
stay as is.
Hamill, yep. So just not to confuse the two and to couple them together, I think it's best to keep them uncoupled.
No worries.
Maybe we could say gifting or disposal.
Disposal is everything.
I know, but it just
Recycling.
sounds quite,
It's anything.
That's sufficient.
Oh, come on, Glenn.
So councillors, there's a change recommendation there up on the screen. Councillor Hamill, did you want to speak to that? Are you happy to move it, Councillor Owen-Jones?
No, I'm happy to second it.
Seconded. So moved by Councillor Hamill, seconded by Councillor Owen-Jones. Councillor Hamill, did you want to?
Very quickly,
speak to
Madam
that?
Chair. So after reading the report and hearing the answers to some of the questions today, I don't have a level of confidence in backing that this is where this art installation should go. Concerning to me especially is it appears the lack of consultation with the Friends of the Botanic Gardens. While it may have been a solution to a question put forward, I don't think it's been done in the right methodology, especially with the Regional Botanic Gardens group. So I'm not supportive of any money being spent on it going anywhere at this stage. I'm very concerned about the ongoing maintenance costs. Like, I know the focus has been on how much to install it in the first place, but the suggestion is that there's $1 million plus to be spent effectively polishing this thing over the next 30 years, which I find difficult to accept, and I think most of our ratepayers would find difficult to accept. Further concern to me is I'm not sure why we didn't look at other locations. I know there's history on this, but in this particular report, I think it would have been an opportunity to have said that we did look at other locations. They may not be cheaper, but I think looking at other locations should have been part of it. And finally, I think it's a realistic option to look at that after all this time, disposal of the artwork be considered, be that selling it as an artwork or be that selling it for its scrap metal worth.
Thanks. Councillor Vorster, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just want to draw Council's attention to the fact that we're dealing with an artefact from the first stage of the light rail, from the first stage. Stage 2 has been built, stage 3 is under construction, and my great worry is that this next report will come to us by the time trams start arriving at the Gold Coast Airport. And I actually don't feel as though there is any value to be gained in exploring other locations for this artwork in the city. We have wasted so much city officer time on this, and it has come before committee so often that I think we're creating a bit of a roadblock for the team, and we need to make a decision today. As Councillor Owen-Jones says, sometimes you need to make a decision. And I think the decision today really has to be to divest the artwork. Plainly, there is no spot that is going to tick the boxes. There is no spot. We're trying to jam a square peg in a round hole that is the city, and it's not going to work out. It would have been great had we had a tasteful bit of art that was properly designed for the space in which it was intended, but that's not what we've got. We've looked at the foreshore, we've looked down at Nobby Beach, we've looked at the Botanic Gardens. Now we're opening a discussion about Pimpama and Coomera. Yeah, we're having this massive conversation, and every time it just does not work out. And I think it's about time that we stop wasting city officer time on this, and we stop wasting our time. It hasn't. It has not worked out, and I'm not going to support this because I don't support another report. What I would support is a recommendation that says that the city takes steps to divest its artwork in accordance with the public art policy and be done with it.
Thanks, Councillor Vorster. Actually, I'm going to have a turn here. I would like to say, find out of the officers, are they stored in a council-owned property? Which is a property which is not at a cost to us as such, but if it was, the use of that property is required for something going forward, are there options to store it elsewhere, or are we going to have to start paying for storage if we continue to make these decisions of another report, another report, another report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So at the moment, absolutely yes, it is in storage in a city-owned shed. What I can say to you is a part of the 1CP program and accommodation, we are looking at our depot and our storage across the city. We are absolutely at a point now where we are running out of room, and certainly it will be challenging ongoing. So understanding how we look after this, if we don't dispose of it, will come up.
Which I think speaks to what Councillor Vorster was saying. If we continue to put it off and ask for reports to, say, review the next area, it's eventually going to start double costing our ratepayers when we have to look at storing it. So I'll go to Councillor Owen-Jones, and then I'll go to Councillor Patterson, Councillor O'Neill.
So my question, I suppose, is going to have to be through you, Chair, to the Director in regards to, a sense that Councillor Vorster might be foreshadowing something different, and that is, are we in a position where we can actually make a decision to agree to dispose of it today, or do we need to be mindful of any copyright issues or artist issues that we may have, that is why we may benefit from a future report?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I think we will need to go and check our legal advice. So we've been looking at, obviously, the obligations to the artist in the sense of us putting it somewhere. We just need to make sure there isn't anything that's specific to disposal or passing on of the artwork. So we would need to come back with that advice.
So I have a sense we have to deal with it. Wherever we install it, we have to deal with it with an element of respect to the artwork, and that's in the report. In regards to a disposal, I just think that we need to be clear. I'm clearly not opposed to the idea of disposal. We need to be mindful of what it may be worth as a piece of art and what it may be worth as 4 tonnes of stainless steel. In regards to the comments that you made, Chair, in regards to storage, whilst it might be currently stored undercover, clearly it was something that was designed to live in the elements, and I don't see any problem in us temporarily storing it in the open, for example, at some place like the Sundown waste facility, which is clearly where a whole lot of things have been stored over time. So I think we've got options, but I agree. Fundamentally, I agree with Councillor Vorster in regards to, if we can make a decision, we can make a decision, and then we don't have to worry about paralysis by analysis.
Thank you, Councillor Owen-Jones. I'll go to Councillor Patterson, and then Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Vorster.
Thank you, Chair. And I can understand the position of Councillor Vorster, and I think for councillors who've been here longer than a term, I totally get it. However, there are also councillors here who this is the first we've heard of this. And I think when we talk about the assessment that officers need to do and the amount of time, I do think 5-minute phone calls can make a difference. It doesn't need to be a sophisticated process. A call to every councillor before this happened, hey, we're about to do this, what do you think? Is there another spot? I would have told you 3. And then there would have been another call to our guys to work out what's underground there. And then we'd know, is that possible, is that not possible? So for it to get to this stage, before we've even seen anything, known anything, and also for the community who this is effectively thrust upon, for them not to have anything, I find that somewhat disappointing. And I always like to get to a decision when we can, but I still think that there is potentially opportunity for this, and that's why I'll be supporting this motion.
Can I just ask a question there too, through probably to you, Kath, is that we've got a public art advisory group. Were they consulted prior to coming to committee?
Not that we're aware of. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And I was in the previous council that this came up, and there has been a comedy of errors. But there's one thing that I just want to bring up, and I think as a city, and now that we have a cultural precinct, and I think we should be embracing public art and meaningful public art, and we all know what I call meaningful public art. And I thought, when I read the report, I actually thought the gardens was a good place for at the entrance, because I know that when I first became a councillor, I hadn't been to the gardens. As a matter of fact, I'd driven past it several times and hadn't even realised it was there, so it probably does need an entrance statement. But, you know, having read the report, the cost of installation there and what needs to be done, I thought was just over the top. I'm sort of with Councillor Patterson on this. I think we should look at other areas. I just think, you know, if you look at all the capital cities that embrace, and other cities, regional cities that embrace public art, I just think that if we're just dismissing it, I'll give it back to the artist or get rid of it. I don't think that's I don't think that's a good message that we're sending out to anyone. And I know that public art is subjective, and you'll get a lot of residents who say don't want to spend the money, but the fact is that public art is expensive. And usually when public art is installed, there's a lot of people who would say, oh, it's too expensive, but then embrace it when it's actually in situation. So, look, I think that it's worth looking at places like Hodder. And the other part of the gardens that I thought it was a great idea, but the lack of consultation did worry me, because I did receive a couple of emails from a couple of Life members from the gardens, and that was a bit of a concern. But I think that we should look at putting them somewhere. And the maintenance cost is a bit of a problem. It should get something that actually, well, my public art that will go back on top of Kira Hill is made to rust. Well, no maintenance. Thank you.
I'll go to Councillor Vorster, then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For those councillors who were elected in 2012 or before, those of us who arrived in 2016, may recall that at the site we had a giant concrete vodka bottle plastered with thongs, right, here at the Arts and Cultural Precinct. And I think there's a real worry when council decides to plonk any old art in this precinct for the sake of, you know, putting art in an arts and cultural precinct. So we've got this vodka bottle thing that was ultimately got rid of. At what expense, I'm not sure. We had that paper mache elephant. Is that still here? Anyway, we've had a lot of things dumped at this precinct which have ultimately come out, and they've never really engendered deep community affection. What we have done since this Urban Oasis project is we have adopted a brand new public art policy that has high levels of consultation, good governance around it, and good community engagement that, guess what it does? Engages local artists. And I think this artist, I think the ferns are fabricated in Ireland, if I recall correctly. So I think what we're dealing with is a historical problem. We actually have a good process now. It's value for money driven. It favours local engagement, and moving forward, public art will be dealt with very respectfully in the city. But that's not what we have. We have got a bunch of silver ferns that continue to haunt city offices, I'm sure, in their sleep, and every couple of years haunts this council because we can't quite work out what to do with them. And I have to say, if the leaders of the city cannot work out where to put these things, I'd probably say they don't belong in the city. If over a number of years we've resolved to find locations and we can't nail it, we're probably forcing the issue, and we're forcing these things on the Gold Coast. I think the point was made by perhaps Councillor Patterson, but it could be Councillor O'Neill. The costs are extraordinary. You know, we're talking about $1.7 million of installation and maintenance costs over 30 years. Over 30 years, $1.7 million. And I'm very hesitant in spending that sort of money when what we could be doing is upgrading the actual entrance to the Botanic Gardens that will actually support the delivery of that interpretive centre or the biodiversity centre. 1.7 million could take care of all of the road upgrades required to facilitate the delivery of the centre. But instead, we're contemplating perhaps spending money on these ferns that no one really wants. I've got a big problem with that. So, Madam Acting Chair, what I'd like to do, sorry, Madam Chair, I should say. Oh, she's acting very well. What I'd like to do is foreshadow a resolution. And what I want to do is I want to foreshadow a resolution that takes advantage of our new public art policy, which contemplates divestment and disposal. And the motion would read that, that city officers take steps to divest or dispose of the Urban Oasis artwork in keeping with the public art policy. And I just, although I can't really talk to it, I'm just foreshadowing it just by way of explanation. That public art policy refers, when it refers to disposal and divestment, it talks about needing to work with legal services and checking off all manner of items, including consultation. So my expectation is if this became the motion, we would attempt to divest or dispose of it in keeping with the public art policy. And if city officers were cut adrift and couldn't progress it, then we would get another report. Otherwise, this should be the end of it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So probably in relation to the changed recommendation, it would be very useful for officers to maybe put some parameters around the rest of the city. So obviously every time we look at a location, we will be needing to do the engineer and feasibility assessment. And I think to earlier points, we would need to do some initial consultation so that we could bring back you know, the level of information that you need to make a decision. So the rest of the city is quite wide, and we probably just need some guidance on how much or how many locations or in which kind of framework you'd like that to be done, because that could take a significant amount of time if it's quite open. And funding, sorry.
So councillors, if we go to our change recommendation, which is moved by Councillor Hamill and seconded by Councillor Owen Jones. It's up there on the screen there, and if we take that to the vote and we see what level of support we have there, what's our appetite to continue investigating areas. So it's up there on the screen, moved by Councillor Hamill, seconded by Councillor Owen Jones. All those in favour? That's Councillor Hamill, Councillor Patterson and Councillor Taylor. All those against? And that's carried. So then we lost, sorry, thank you for correcting me. So lost. So I got carried away. So that is lost. So we go to our foreshadowed motion there, which is again up there on the screen. And that is now seconded by Councillor Owen Jones. So we have the moved by Councillor Vorster, seconded by Councillor Owen Jones. All those in favour?
Sorry, it's a procedural motion, or is it we're voting? No. So I'm assuming that the foreshadowed motion is now the motion.
Yeah, now the motion, yeah.
And now we're going to vote for the motion prior to allowing you to speak on
Yeah.
it or against it.
But that's okay.
Because Councillor Hamill wanted it put.
Yeah, okay, get on with it.
Okay. So yes. So if we could, all those in favour? So Councillor Hamill, Councillor Owen Jones, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Taylor, Vorster and myself. Those against? Councillor Patterson. So that motion is carried. Councillor, not carried. Councillor Vorster, would you like to speak to that? Short, quickly. Yeah.
Look, it was pretty compelling.
Yes.
Look, Madam Chair, that was a big decision on the part of committee. It was an absolutely massive decision because a lot of money has been spent. The city's reputation has also been put on the line with the arts community, but ultimately I think it reflects a very long, the inevitable outcome of a very long journey. We have made so many good faith attempts to find a home for this artwork, and on every occasion we have failed. And at some point I think we need to reflect on whether or not this artwork can and should have a home on the Gold Coast. And given the pressures on resources, I couldn't countenance delaying what I feel is the inevitable. Every year, the Swell Sculpture Festival puts large-scale artworks on the southern end of the Gold Coast, a beautiful part of the Gold Coast, and those artworks are advertised for sale. And it could be that the city takes the step to dispose of this artwork in accordance with the policy, and it could be that somebody comes along and decides to purchase the artwork, obviously with the blessing of the artist. That could be an outcome. So we're not necessarily talking about melting down the ferns. The ferns could find a home. It's just that it's probably not going to be on public space here on the Gold Coast. And for the sake of the artist, for the sake of the city, for the sake of city officers, and for the sake of the council, I think it's appropriate that we draw the line under the sand. And I'm sure the ratepayers would much prefer our money to be spent on things like road upgrades. I'm sure they would breathe a sigh of relief as well. It's up to full council, but I think the ratepayers are on our side today at committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vorster. Okay, we're done. Thanks, Mitch. Great work. Yeah, yeah. And you did it with a smile. Yeah. Councillor, my colleagues, we've got one more item 7.1, which is in a closed session report on the autonomous vehicle trial. Yes, it is. Yeah. Councillors, this is on grey paper for the local government's budget. So if I could have someone move us into close. Thank you. Councillor Vorster moved us into close, seconded Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? Are we in favour? No, I've got two. Yeah, 3, 4. Okay, into closed. Thank you. Thank you. Councillors, we just had a quite a intensive question and answer time on our autonomous vehicle trial within our closed sessions. I believe we've exhausted the number of questions that we could ask, so we'll take a vote on that with the current, with the recommendation up there on the board.
So I'm not moving it, but I'm going to speak against it. So.
I was going to.
And I'm happy to move a slightly different recommendation, Madam Chair, if you like, that just breaks the part 3 into a planning and then back to us for procurement. If there is no other mover for the motion.
Yes, there was no mover for the, are you moving the motion, councillor?
No, you don't even have to have a foreshadow.
Don't
You can
even
just
have
go
to have
straight
a
to a
foreshadow.
recommendation.
I would like to propose that we take off number 3.
We just leave it at 1 and 2, and I'm happy to speak to that.
So if we were to amend the motion there and remove remove number 3, would
So
we?
it's not foreshadowed, it just 3
No.
disappears.
It's just 3 disappears.
And I'm happy to second that.
So that's moved by councillor Patterson and seconded by councillor Owen Jones. Councillor Vorster.
And
I'll
I'd
go
like to
you.
foreshadow a motion.
Okay.
But there's- So it's,
And
So
yes.
councillor Vorster, you
So
would.
yes.
so I'd like to foreshadow the city officer recommendation, but I'd like to slightly alter part 3. So read that council note the key findings. Great. The council support the planning of phase 2 of the AV trial. With any decision to proceed requiring a further council resolution. Yep. So with the decision to proceed requiring a Yep. And essentially that allows the city officers to go on, do their homework, and then come back to council with the decision to proceed or not. So we have the ability to see what we're getting ourselves in for. Yep. So that's my foreshadowed.
So I'll go to the officer's recommendation there, councillors. I just need to be able to see who moved it, yeah. Moved by councillor Patterson and seconded by councillor Owen. Councillors, we're just taking it to the vote there. Moved by councillor Patterson, seconded by councillor Owen Jones. There's a foreshadowed motion there from councillor Vorster. So if we're going to vote on the procedural motion, which, just a motion there. And yes, councillor Patterson.
Thank you. The focus and interest on last mile is really important, and for me in my local division, I'm sure other councillors have this in their division. For me, sorry, I can't think and talk while you're talking. So, for example, Keebra Park. I've got a lot of families there where they don't have enough cars and they're so close to light rail and the CBD, but they're so far away. So that last mile is really, really important. My concern with this is rather than us looking at what is the need that we have for people, we're looking at a product or a technology. I don't care about the product or technology. I care in getting that delivered. There's been so many presentations on this about the complications of delivering this even in a kind of tourist little precinct like that this isn't the answer anytime soon for that real last mile concern that we really have. And my concern is the more we go down this rabbit hole, the less we actually, the more we forget why we started on this in the first place, which is how do we deal with that last mile matter in those really important areas. So that's why I can't support this, because I can't support us taking it down another track when we're not considering what we need in our suburbs for people to get into, either we're connected with the light rail or connected into greater spots. So I think we can acknowledge it. I've got a comment here from Main Beach residents on their experience of it, and I think this is a pretty common experience of it so far, that the test one was pretty silly, very slow, and taking up valuable car parks. That's effectively the best thing that we've had said from our residents about this. And I'm all excited about driverless cars and seeing it in the future, and buses. And I don't think we need to allocate our funding right now to that trial. The technology is interesting. People are going to do it elsewhere. Let's focus on what the point of this is, the last mile instead. Thank you.
Councillor Vorster.
Just speaking against. Madam Chair, sorry, I always think I'm at council, but I should be standing if that's the case. Look, Madam Chair, the reality is that the way people will move about is changing, and in a lot of respects, Australia is a laggard. Laggard? Is that if I use it correctly? In San Francisco, right now, you can hail a cab from your phone, the cab arrives, and there is no one in it. You step in, and it will take you to your destination without a driver. This is not science fiction. This is reality. What's interesting, though, is none of that happened by accident. It actually required manufacturers to spend hundreds of thousands of hours driving those roads with those vehicles to build extremely complex models of the streetscape. The cars had to learn how to drive in the same way that a child might need to learn how to walk. If we hope and expect those sorts of vehicles to operate on Gold Coast roads and reduce the need for families to have that second or third car because mobility can be treated as a service, we need to make sure that our road network is similarly fit for purpose. Now, I'm not thrilled with us spending money on a shuttle experiment, as it were, but I'm sufficiently convinced by city officers that this is the lowest risk, low-hanging fruit for us to begin testing our road network for the suitability of fully driverless vehicles. And if we don't do this now, I feel as though we will not understand how roads need to be built in the future. And we will compound the cost to us because we will build roads that are not fit for purpose. Freight will change. Public transport will change. Things like taxis and Ubers will change. The way we perhaps accommodate vehicles in private development will change, and it will change rapidly. We will make mistakes, however, if we don't have evidence and data in the local context. So, yeah, I think the first trial could have been better, but I think we didn't know what we didn't know. City officers have a better understanding of the data that we need to start collecting, and I am very willing to give them the opportunity to go do that homework before saying yes or no. I think it's actually too premature to be saying no today, and for that reason I cannot support Councillor Patterson's motion.
Councillors, I think we've had an ample discussion on that today, so we've got a recommendation up there now, moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Owen-Jones. All those in favour? That's 2, and that's all those against. That motion is lost, so we'll go to Councillor Vorster's foreshadowed motion, which I'm happy to second. So I'll second that one, Jeremy. Yep, second it. Okay, so councillors, we have the motion up there on the screen, moved by Councillor Vorster, seconded by myself. Is there a number 1 there? You're the number 1. All right. take that to the vote, councillors. All those in favour? That's carried. Yes, if we could just note councillor Owen Jones and councillor Patterson against. We all good, girls? Okay. All right, so that's carried. Councillors, that's the end of our agenda items. I believe there was a general business item from councillor Hamill. I might just give the minute takers a couple of moments. Thanks, officers, that was great. I'll give the minute taker a couple of minutes just to catch up.
Madam Chair, just in light of some wording that Councillor Vorster used in a previous recommendation, I was hoping to add a second pointer into the GBI, if that's okay, quickly.
Yep. But just hang on a tick. Just let them, I think they're
got
catching
it.
up now.
Yep.
Yeah, all good? So you're happy to add something to that? So that's a general business item, yep.
So I just want to replicate Councillor Vorster's recommendation before that city officers take steps to divest or dispose of the lights installation in keeping with the public art policy, just to keep standard across recommendations.
Nothing but consistent. Funding from Division 1 LIW. Have you seen my
Funding from all councillors who voted for it in the first place, maybe.
Or me.
fix? I'll second it.
So, Jeremy, that would just be divest or dispose?
Trust you.
And it should be that city officers, not
Yeah, I
offers.
saw it. It's been,
Yeah,
it's been circulated faster than a Martin Hall report.
that's it. Councillor Hamill, would you like to just have a read through that to make sure you're happy with your GB item?
Madam Chair, I'm fine with it as long as I guess that's clear that point 2 relates to the Yatala lights installation. I don't have to be specific there like we were before to our director.
I reckon it had a name. I can't remember what it was.
And that'll be seconded by councillor Owen Jones.
Go down screaming together. Well, I suggested we used it as a underwater dive attraction.
Electrocution.
No. So there's one light per Wonder Reef.
The Yatala lights,
well, I
would you
suggested-
put installation just to make sure that it's not all Yatala lights going out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turf Club can buy it then. Oh, Councillor.
Thank you. All caught up? Yeah. Yeah, no, you're good. That's what I'm asking you. You don't want to be stressed doing it. Yeah. Councillors, that's moved by councillor Hamill, general business item, seconded by councillor Owen Jones. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Do we have any information, sorry, I was just going to ask a question about that. Do we have any information that confirms that that's the funding that's going to be required for the removal, for example? Any contemporary information as to that being the cost?
Through you, Madam Chair, we obviously haven't contemplated that recently. That's a prior figure. We can certainly come back before full council to confirm that number.
Better, faster.
Councillors, if there's no other general business items today, I declare the meeting closed at 14:39.